Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. A shorthanded, beaten up Lakers team needed every second of the 48 minutes that they played in Utah to win, but they did, and it was a big one. We'll break down next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. This one's always free, and it is never, ever, ever behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where y'all can go to hang out with over 26,000 subscribers to the channel, Andy, all of whom are breathing a sigh of relief after the Lakers just kind of snuck by, got through. They got it done. They needed a win against Utah, playing without not just the normal complement of injured players, but three additions to that list. We break it all down here in a second. They did get the victory with a game tonight in Minnesota.
In Utah.
Looming. I'm sorry. No, a game tonight in Minnesota.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, but I knew what you were getting at.
I'm just used to you not knowing the schedule. You've been very confused about this Utah-Minnesota sequence. So at this point, I actually
Utah, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, all these other things. It's also because we've got Thursdays that are holidays.
Whatever. I don't need an explanation.
My calendar.
I don't need your damn life story. I'm just explaining why I thought you had the wrong city. That's it.
My point is they are playing in Minnesota tonight, and it was really important that they win. And we'll talk about why in a second. But all I'm trying to do is let people know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, in addition to Vando, Wood, the normal, and then now Jaxson Hayes, who's after a brief cameo went back to the injured list here with the same ankle problem. D'Angelo Russell on
that he
Sunday.
hurt himself, by the way. Quick side note: Jaxson Hayes in utter garbage time. That's a real kick in the nards, man. Like there was no reason for him to be out there at all. None. Like that's going to be one of those forgotten things that JJ Redick may need to answer for, and
like
was
Christian Koloko available? Anybody?
I don't care.
Right,
I don't go small in that.
Play 4-on-5. My team is on the floor.
Like, I don't care. Like again, it's going to end up in the grand scheme of things likely being forgotten, but one of those matters that JJ should at least have to sit down with Rob and give an explanation, because there was no reason for him to be out there.
In his year-end review.
I mean, he's one of two centers they have. I guess three if you're counting Koloko, but respectfully to Koloko, they'd rather not.
Yeah. Not arguing. So D'Angelo Russell was sick on Sunday. That was actually anticipated. He was listed as doubtful going into the game with an illness, and doubtful one. And so he didn't play. And Austin Reaves, who took it was the fall that from the other night that I think was what did it, against Oklahoma City. The aftermath of that, he was out, and also Cam Reddish didn't play. So the Lakers
also sick.
Shorthanded already, and now playing without three key members of the rotation and two of the three guards that ever play for the team. So this was not, I realize they still have LeBron. I realize they still had AD, and they were playing a Utah team that had won 4 games all season and was short, like Jordan Clarkson, for example. So they were not at full strength either. But that said, those are challenging circumstances, especially when you're talking about, I believe this was the 4th game in 5 nights or whatever. They're in the midst of a lot of games in a lot of days.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that there are going to be Laker fans thoroughly unimpressed by this showing. And if anything,
I should mention the score. It was 105-104. The Lakers had to hang on for a last second shot attempt from Colin Sexton that didn't go down. And then, they needed all 48 minutes.
Well,
I never said the score. I don't know what day it is. I never said the score.
Let's rewind it back even further to further illustrate the idea of the Lakers getting by in this game. Colin Sexton, before the final shot that was blocked by quite possibly 3 Lakers, Christian Coloco, I believe, who had been guarding the inbound. And side note, as long as there are inbound passes to be guarded, Christian Coloco will always have a job in professional basketball.
Like being a really good long snapper. That guy is always going to have a gig.
That guy is perfect for inbound pass
guarding.
Long arms. Yeah. Long arms, coordinated, tall. He's perfect. But Coloco, I'm sure got a piece of it. Other guys might have as well. But before that, with like 2 seconds left, Colin Sexton had been driving to the basket, actually put up a layup that went down, except as he was doing that, Will Hardy called timeout, which wiped out the basket, put the Jazz in position where they had to inbound the ball that eventually ended up a shot that didn't even go up. I just hope that had something to do with Cooper Flag and them realizing, look, man, we are dangerous. Like, the Wizards have won 2 games, man. We got to keep up with the Joneses.
Here's the thing. That
was just inexplicable.
There were 2 things about that. Well, I'll try to explain it right now, but I first of all, I think the play at the basket wasn't contested in part because they saw the timeout and heard the whistle, and Anthony Davis never bothered to try to contest the shot, which he certainly would have had the whistle not blown. So the fact that there was just this uncontested layup, it would have been contested. Part 2 of that is, I will say, when I was watching from the TV, I could understand how, because the Jazz got the rebound. And they're coming up the floor, and Will Hardy's like, get out there and play, young man. You do this because, can you rely on the 4-win team to run a play out of a timeout either? I don't know. And you could see Colin Sexton, he took the ball up on the right side of the floor and just sort of started going back to the left and like way around, and they kept switching and all these. And I could see, if I'm Will Hardy, going, you know what, we need to set something up, and trying, with 3 or 4 seconds left, trying to call timeout by the time. Now, it worked out well for the Lakers, but and I'm not saying this is going to go down as the finest moment in Will Hardy's coaching career. But our friend David Locke, who of course runs the network and hosts Locked On Jazz at the same time, I don't know how hard he's being on Will Hardy in this particular case, but I at least sort of understood, because I thought that play was kind of going off the rails too.
Didn't look like it to me, but
the whole season's gone off the rails. But let's talk about like the Lakers. I will say this, and I'll give Utah credit. They never quit on the game, but there were 12 times over the course of this game. And the Lakers were playing hard. It wasn't like they were phoning it in.
No,
they absolutely recognized the importance of winning this game ahead of tonight's game in Minnesota, where they still could be very well shorthanded. Will still obviously be, whether they got guys back or not, will be playing another back-to-back on the heels of this long stretch of games and all of that. Like, they had to win tonight's game or Sunday night's game. That had to happen. And so, like, the Lakers weren't phoning it in, but every time, like, just it seemed like, oh, they're up by 5 or 6 million, and they had this nice little lead, 4, 5, 6 points with a few minutes left. And Utah, it was disappointing to see. If there is a place that's disappointing, I'll tell you where, because Anthony Davis obviously had big numbers. LeBron, much better game from him especially in terms of assist to turnover, all that kind of stuff. I will tell you the place that I found to be a little bit disappointing, even while I am not one of these people who says this is like some sort of bad win or whatever. It's a tough night in a building that's can be hard to win in against a very motivated team when you're missing a lot of your rotation. Take whatever win you can get. There is a worrisome sign, though. I'll tell you next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by BetterHelp. How do you stay cozy and in a good mental place during the winter months? For some, it's snuggling up in a blanket with some hot chocolate, or maybe you watch a movie with the family during the month of December. 2 words for y'all: die hard. Either way, therapy is another great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the seasons change, which can be tough for some people. And I can personally attest to how much therapy helped me and my family during a really difficult period, just helping us find different ways to communicate, make compromises without feeling unsatisfied or unheard, and just to help find the best version of yourself, not just for yourself, but for the people in your life. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Okay, so quick reminder to everybody, you probably have seen it on the feed if you're a subscriber to the show. The Locked On Lakers channel has a postcast you hosted after every game by our friend Dave Palais. It's just another way to get instant reaction to what is going on with the Lakers following every game. So make sure you check that out, and of course, sign up for the Locked On Lakers newsletter, which you can get to go to lockedondaily.com, click on Locked On Lakers, and all of this stuff gets delivered straight to your inbox every day. So, look, there are some encouraging things from this in terms of what the Lakers did. You had a nice bounce back game for Anthony Davis against a guy in Walker Kessler who's got very good defensive numbers inside. So it wasn't like a soft matchup. But AD goes for 33 and 11, much more like an Anthony Davis game that we've been accustomed to over the course of this season.
16 points in the third quarter as the Lakers started to, I don't want to say pull away from the Jazz, because obviously they won by 1 point,
right.
But when they started to, I think, have more consistent control of the game and more periods where it looked like, albeit incorrectly, that they were going to actually just put the game away for good, comfortably, AD's third quarter played a big role in that.
Yeah, and so from there, and then you had LeBron, who, while inefficient from the field and particularly from the three-point line, where he was 0 for 9, noted after the game, he really couldn't hit an outside shot to save his life. He essentially playing the role of point guard, had 14 assists against only 3 turnovers, which we've talked a lot, Andy, about the issue with him of turnovers. And this was a night the Lakers were not going to win unless LeBron and AD were both positives on the floor. And in this game, they definitely were. Like, you needed LeBron's distribution and ball handling here, and you needed him to keep the turnovers down. He did. You needed Anthony Davis to provide you with some points, to provide you with a defensive presence. He did, especially too, given, Andy, that Dalton Connect had a rare bad game as a starter. So it was even more important that the 2 stars show up. And so I thought that, for starters, was a positive. And then there's Gabe Vincent, who started in play, with Reaves and with Russell out. Vincent's in the starting lineup, and I understand this is a low bar to clear. Was this his best game as a Laker going back to last year?
Dude,
I don't remember all of them.
I triple checked this just to make sure I was correct. Gabe Vincent had 10 points in this game, 4 or 5 from the field, 2 of 3 from behind the arc, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. This was Gabe Vincent's first regular season game as a Laker in double figures. Like, he had, I think, 2 preseason games in double figures, but this was Gabe Vincent's first regular season. Like, again, I kept double checking because I just wanted to make sure, am I looking at the right time of the season? And look, I mean, it was needed. Like, all 10 of them were definitely needed. And it does play into the idea, I've talked about this before, that I think part of what has led Gabe to, I think, not have a role on this team and not have a comfortable fit is he needs a certain amount of usage to really be useful as a player, because he hit 2 threes in this game, but he's not a consistent outside threat. He is not like a great rebounder for his size. Like, he can defend well in certain matchups, but his size gets in the way of like true versatility. He's not an incredible distributor to begin with. Like, he needs the ball in his hands to do a certain amount of tangible things. Otherwise, you're really just
time, I think, too. Like, this 31 minutes on Sunday, I mean, that's got to be his high with the Lakers.
One
isn't
would
it?
think, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think all of that matters. And so, maybe this is something that can help him get going a little bit. Obviously, it's going to be challenging to find him, when everybody's healthy. He's not going to get this kind of
everybody's
usage.
healthy. I'm not 100% sure he's going to be in the rotation much.
He might not be. And so, but any kind of positive here. And the last positive, I know I mentioned going into the break, there was something that I thought was concerning, and we'll get to it, I promise. Max Christie, 30 minutes, 10 points, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. And, very strong. He is, 8, he got to the line 10 times, made 8 of them. And he is kind of quietly rounding into a form, goes like, okay, this is more along the lines of what the Lakers hope they'd be getting. And you combine him with Jalen Hood-Schifino pressed into usage with 12 and a half minutes, and Armel Traore played 11 minutes in this game. And not only did those guys come in and they contribute and they kind of held their own, the Lakers actually thrived when those guys were on the floor. I'm not saying it's because of them specifically, but just to give you an idea of the fact the Lakers did not suffer when those guys were playing. They were a plus 10 in Christie's minutes, over 30 minutes. That's pretty meaningful. JHS, they were a plus 12 in his 12 and a half minutes, and they were plus 11 in Traore's 11. And so, like, for those guys to be able to come in and in a situation where it's like, I'm sure the coaching staff was just like hoping that the damage wouldn't be too bad, and that they actually, contributed, and, the Lakers were able to continue playing and didn't dig themselves a hole and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a positive. JHS needs any kind of good news.
Yeah, with JHS, I thought, particularly defensively, I thought he looked pretty good out there, and he looked more sure of himself, and hopefully that's the byproduct of just extended G League reps. I tweeted out also Blue Sky, both under Cam Brothers. The Lakers, the last 10 games have been up and down in terms of performance, and I think, particularly against good opponents. But the big bright spot is that Max Christie has increasingly looked the part of a guy that the Lakers paid this offseason. Like, he looks now at minimum like a legit NBA rotation player. And, hopefully he starts becoming more prolific, but he looks like the guy that the Lakers thought that they were signing when they gave him that contract this offseason. The last thing, too, there is nobody on this team who sprints harder after a missed basket than Armel Traore. Like,
he does everything hard.
Like, I mean, but that is a guy that clearly recognizes I'm not allowed to miss shots. Like, if I take one, I better damn well make it. I mean, he could have beaten Usain Bolt the way he sprinted back.
My bad. Here I go.
I mean, my God, he got his ass back. But you know what? That's great. That is great, and that is something that this team, frankly, could use more of. Like,
I mean, he's the rare guy who got better after summer. Like he goes and you're looking at summer league going like, and then you see preseason. Oh, it's like, okay, I get it. And so good for these guys for being pressed into action and being. I mean, I don't think necessarily Traore is lacking in confidence. I don't think
I've interviewed him. He's not.
Right. And I don't think his path is not one where he's been kind of beaten down in the same way that Hood-Schifino has. I mean,
played
just signed
in France.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. But I'm just saying,
He's
I mean, like
not.
his NBA path, like he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. And most people are like, ooh, he could be pretty good. He is fulfilling his promise to this point. JHS has had almost no positive. And look, I'm not saying he was phenomenal by any stretch. I'm not saying he was somebody I'm like looking to get him back, but just to be able to be like, you know what, my team needs me. So like Lakers needed him to play, and they needed him to play pretty well.
He helped.
And they needed 10 to 15 minutes out of him. They just had to have it. And he came in and he provided them with solid enough time on the floor. And that is just like step one, is like just some minutes where you're out on the floor and it doesn't feel like a disaster. A few more of those, and JHS could be in a position where maybe he's able to start contributing. Guys, kid's only still 21 years old. Like there's still time. I haven't still gotten to that part that I was a little, the part that I do find worrisome about Sunday's win, which we can get to next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet just $5. $5 and you get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. So just pick something really obvious, put down $5, boom, you win. There's your $150 in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, including information. So if it feels like you've got a feel for how a game is playing out, but you just want to confirm your hunches, go to the FanDuel page and they will have all of the latest stats, play-by-play, and all this other information right there for you, streamlined. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. And again, you get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
If there is a place, Andy, that I leave this game still with some concerns, not that I would expect a 1-point win over the Jazz to necessarily erase all of my concerns. The late game execution, late quarter execution, late game execution, like they had one play where they had 4 opportunities to score. I mean, kudos to them for getting on the glass, tapping back balls and whatever. And each one of them were just like, oh, so how about I'll take a 3 now? Okay, you know what? I'll take a 3 now. Like, and it got to the point where JJ Redick was so annoyed, I think, by what he was seeing. And like, hey guys, we've got these extra possessions. We need a bucket here to get ourselves up. I think it would have put him up 6. I don't remember exactly. He called timeout. And their execution out of the timeout was terrible. Like they barely got the shot up, even out of the timeout. LeBron had to force up a long, awkward 2. And so I feel like even shorthanded, they should have been able to execute better down the stretch to get themselves either a couple more buckets or a couple more stops, to where you don't need LeBron to hit like kind of a pretty impressive, lefty floater in the lane. And you don't need AD to hit that sort of like elbow jumper or whatever. You don't need Will Hardy to call a timeout to take a bucket away. You don't need a little bit of luck. Sexton kind of mishandling the last play and all of this stuff. Like that game could have turned out differently. You're playing a better team. They probably probably would have lost. They need to figure out a way to solve that stuff. Like they need to button it up at the end of quarters, at the end of games. Even when you don't have all of your guys, you had enough guys on the floor who were professionals that they should have been able to, I think, rather than see a 5-point lead shrink down to 1, they should have been able to keep it at 5 or push it out to 6 or 7 and not have this thing go down to the last second.
We've talked about it before. They can be a very impatient team at times. As brilliant as LeBron is at executing offense and, seeing the entire floor, anticipating stuff 2 or 3 moves before it actually happens. I mean, he had 2 sequences in this game, like 2 separate sequences of behind the back post up bounce passes to Max Christie cutting along the baseline. That, I mean, were just perfect. Like, you cannot do it any better than LeBron did. But LeBron sometimes, I think, is chief among the guys that gets impatient. Like, if you've watched LeBron for now as long as we have on a game in, game out basis, he sometimes goes for the knockout punch, I think, a little bit earlier than the opponent is ready to be knocked out, as opposed to just chipping away. But you're correct. It's something that they need to do better at. I do think it was more difficult just in the sense that it's hard to run action with, like, really good action with a limited amount of both scorers and ball handlers on the court.
And JJ Redick pointed that out after the game. He talked about, like, we just could not, meaning the Lakers, couldn't get anything going over the course of the entire, like, offensively, it was just really difficult. And you're down your best facilitator in the second unit, really your best facilitator, I think, on the team outside of, I guess, LeBron in D'Lo, and Reaves is a huge part of the offense, whether you think he's a natural point guard or not. He's still a huge part of the offense and a catalyst for it. And so,
also, I mean,
I was just saying, like, he said really all that was left was LeBron pick and roll. And so that's just what they were going to do over and over and over again. I get it. I just feel like, even like, this is where those moments where, like you say, are, a good team, well, like Memphis, some of these other teams that kind of rely on their depth. Other teams, you see Boston play, you see, just different teams like this. They find ways to execute properly in these moments. And I do not object at all to the idea that this game was close. I was sort of expecting it to be once you see the list of who's not playing. But just those last 5 possessions for each team, I feel like the Lakers later on in the season, hopefully as a better team, will be able to just execute better, with fewer little mistakes, or just cleaner shots, or better defense, or whatever it might be, to where you're just doing the right stuff at the right time. If the other team scores anyway, great, that happens. But you're just not missing anything on the checklist. And I feel like in the last 3 minutes of this game, the Lakers missed too many things on the checklist.
Well, to put in perspective, why I think in part that happens. And again, I'm not looking to excuse it away, because, like you said, there are other teams that figure this stuff out, and figuring stuff out often means figuring out difficult things. But to put in perspective why it becomes difficult, there were 6 players involved in that sequence involving post timeout: LeBron, AD, Rui, Max, Gabe, Dalton. You have LeBron, who is the only true facilitator out there. Gabe Vincent at this point has not had nearly enough time handling the ball, much less orchestrating Jack with this team. AD needs the ball to get to him. Rui, who I just want to make sure we point out, played very well in this game.
Yeah, nice game.
13 points, 7 rebounds, 3 on the offensive glass, 3 assists, 2 steals. Like, another thing I tweeted out during the game is that after a few slow games coming back from that ankle injury, the last couple, Rui has really looked like himself again. And he played very well. But Rui is not a guy you have run your offense. That's not what Max does, and he's not a scorer.
Rui Hachimura, no.
Right, and it's not what Max does, and he's not a scorer anyway. And Dalton, while I think is not bad at moving the ball, he is not somebody that necessarily you have run your crunch time offense. He was having a bad game anyway. So again, I'm not looking to provide excuses for it. I'm looking to provide context. This is the context that made it difficult. I agree with you. You still should be able to figure out, if nothing else, better than they did, or just more patiently than they did. It was the lack of patience a lot of times that bothered me more than the lack of execution.
I can see it, and they got out of it. We'll see. I am not expecting much out of Monday's game, out of tonight's game. But sometimes that's when you're surprised. Like, when you're tired, and they're going to be tired. LeBron noted their travels, maybe their travel everywhere is kind of messed up just with the weather and everything. They played a lot of games in a lot of days. They're short some dudes. And, even if, let's say, D'Lo and Reddish are both feeling better, I think we've all been sick enough times in our lives to know that if you're that sick where you can't do your job the next day, your workout might suffer a little bit. And when your workout is your job, we'll see what those guys can bring. This will be one of those games where you look at it and say, okay, you know what? It's a good test to see, can you lean into the stuff that you've worked on as a team and really focus on keeping your turnovers down, making the right rotation, communicating properly. I mean, they tend to switch most things everywhere defensively anyway, but really, being on point with the stuff that you're being asked to do, minding your mark so you don't get backdoored or things like that, making the extra pass, whatever it might be. Maybe you can because Minnesota's vulnerable. They're not playing particularly well. And so you can execute your way, I think, with, and focus your way perhaps to a surprising win. Play with a little freedom. I don't think anybody's really expecting to win this game. See what happens. But it's just they have to figure out this late end of quarter, end of half, end of game execution thing.
Before we go, there was two stats or milestones, however you want to put it, that were brought up during the Spectrum Sportsnet, both broadcast and post game, that I wanted to bring up regarding LeBron because they're pretty amazing. This game marked LeBron's 585th career double-double. And I did the math on that. That is the equivalent, because that's 585 games where he had a double-double. That is the equivalent of 7 full seasons and change. And there are a lot of basketball players with NBA aspirations that would be plenty happy having carved out 7 years in the NBA. That's LeBron's double-double career. 7 years and change worth of double-doubles. That's pretty astonishing. And then in the post game, they had this graphic where they noted that LeBron now has 15,008 made field goals. Byron Scott, who was part of the post-game broadcast for Spectrum Sportsnet, has 15,097 career points.
Byron Scott, who didn't suck.
I was going to say, reminder for those too young to remember Byron's career. Byron was really flipping good. Byron, for half or more, maybe even 2/3 of the league, if he has that same career for their team, Byron is a retired jersey. Byron was really good.
Byron's very good basketball player.
And LeBron has 88 fewer field goals than Byron had points. That's amazing. And these different framing devices, because we all know by now, LeBron, incredible, GOAT conversation, amazing at 40, yada, yada, yada. I mean, that we've talked about it all.
Right.
But these unique ways to frame it still can at times make my jaw drop, because that's astonishing stuff.
It is. And the numbers, he's been doing it so long and so consistently. And as much as we've talked about, the last week or so has been kind of rough from a turnover standpoint. So it becomes numbing. The fact that he is, last year, for all intents and purposes, just, statistically put up the same numbers he did in the third year of his career. That is insane. But it's such a long period of sustained excellence that it's so unlike any other thing that's ever like as NFL quarterbacks have played into their 40s and stuff, but not doing what he's doing. Nobody touched Tom Brady for the last 3 years of his career. You see Major League Baseball players sometimes get that, but like nobody's doing it at that level. And they didn't start when they were 19 or whatever. So it is pretty stunning. And again, Byron Scott was very good. We'll see what happens tonight. Lakers in Minnesota. I believe it's a 5 p.m. start on the Pacific coast there. So local time, 5 o'clock. We will be back, of course, following the game. You can check the postcast as well with Dave Pillay. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 26,000 subscribers, all of whom I hope have signed up for the newsletter at lockedondaily.com. We will see everyone after the game.